a startup in AI, where are you going to get the data from, right? And the big guys have tons of the data, lots of data, and you can get some as a startup, but you have to be really sneaky or smart or spend a lot of money. Also, a weak data history. There's this classic aphorism from computer science, garbage in, garbage out. Well, the same is true when you're training machine learning models, right? If you have terrible data coming in, maybe that's untrustworthy and so on, then you'll have terrible models. And data is expensive. It's hard to price. There's high friction on this. So there's a lot of challenges here, right? So recently, sort of in the last half a year, I've been asking myself, can decentralization help this? And so, a bit of history, I did AI from the mid-90s all the way up until about 4 years ago, full-time. And then I went basically full-time into blockchain and decentralization. It was probably inevitable that I really try to merge these worlds. I was thinking about it just because I thought it was, a cool thing to think about. But what I've come to realize is, oh my goodness, there's really a lot of things that we can do that mix AI and blockchain in a really powerful way that can actually help the world of AI. And to kind of give a bit of a baseline here, one of the key things is to unlock blockchain technology for AI. One of the prerequisites is scale. Just like we saw from the unreasonable effectiveness of data, you really needed scale. You needed a lot of data to get there. And this is very different, in the world of AI in the 90s, once again, I remember conversations with AI friends. They're like, yeah, we've connected the dots. We've showed that it's possible. Now all we need to do is scale it up, as if that was like the last 5% of the problem. And what we've learned since is it's not the last 5%, it's the first 99.9% of the problem, right? In fact, as we know, the deep learning models of today, they're not that different from the perceptrons of the late 50s, well, the nonlinear ones from the early 60s to be precise. It's not that different, right? We have better regularization and a few other nice tricks, but it's actually not that different. So the same thing here, though. So we really, to unlock blockchains for AI, scale is job one. And databases, of course, go back a long time. There's sort of a history of databases. Oracle was the first company to really successfully commercialize relational databases, SQL style, in the early 80s. And they became very successful. And then when websites took off, then MySQL came along and made it much easier for startups to have their own database, rather than having to spend $100,000 or $1 million on some Oracle deployment. Since that time, scale really started to matter for more and more companies. So the large-scale stuff that Google and others were doing started to filter down and be available to the startups of the world through things like MongoDB, Cassandra, and so on. And that's really, the trick there was distributed databases, right? It was the idea that you could spread the compute load or storage load across more than one physical resource, right? It was still centralized. There was still one entity controlling all of it, but it was actually spread. Now, there's a new type of blue ocean. Each of these steps was sort of blue ocean from the past, right? Going from relational databases to MySQL. It was de-emphasizing some of the things that carried before and adding new things that mattered, whether it's adding open sourceness with step 2, adding scale with step 3. And what blockchain technology does is it actually adds new features, new specs that are interesting. And in this case, it's really a couple. It's decentralized. That is, no single entity owns or controls it, right? And this has a lot of value. It really helps for politics. It helps for sharing and pooling data and so on, as we'll see. It also has this notion of assets, or these days people talk about tokens, right? So you can basically own a token if you have the private key to it, and that can be transferred around on this decentralized substrate, and that's very, very powerful. And that's things that have unlocked this ICO madness of today. So you can frame this in the blue ocean sense too then. Basically, there is the idea of a blue ocean database for blockchains. So just like we had big data, distributed databases, now we have decentralized databases or blockchain databases.